Alright, so the first video of today is kind of a different style of video, I guess I would say, compared to what we usually do on this channel. This video in itself is a little bit of a bookmark. It's a little bit of a remind me back to the future kind of thing, because what we're going over here in this video is a trade that, according to a certain writer on The Athletic, is certain to happen. But he's saying it's probably going to happen in 2022. So, let's take our focus over to the New York Rangers and focus on what exactly they have as a number 1, number 2 center position. So, today we're talking about Ryan Strome. He is a current New York Rangers center who is 27 years old. He's a center right wing, mostly a center though, because, you know, the Rangers manage at number 1, Strome number 2, that's kind of how it goes, and you have Philip Cheadle who's over there, hopefully taking over the reins of number 2 as the years go on, but for now, it is indeed Ryan Strome who is in this spot. The reason we're talking about Ryan Strome is because he's mentioned a few times on a recent article on The Athletic. Take a look at this. Seattle Kraken expansion mock draft 5.0. Who could the New York Rangers lose? This was published half a week ago over here by Rick Carpiniello, and as always, you know the protocol with these things. I'll leave a link down in the description below. If you have The Athletic, you can go ahead and read it. But because The Athletic is indeed paid for material, we're not going to be using this as our primary source for the argument we're making today. We're going over onto NHLTradeTalk.com that highlights a very specific sentiment that is made by Rick Carpiniello here in this piece. Take a look at this. This article is called, "A Scribe Calls Ryan Strome Trade from the Rangers a Near Certainty." Is there any way Ryan Strome makes it to the end of his 2-year contract with the Rangers? One scribe certainly doesn't think so. Obviously here, scribe is referring to Carpiniello himself. Scribe, if you did not know, because it's kind of an older kind of English word, it means writer, pretty much. A person who writes something, who publishes a piece of written material. So, it goes over the situation with Ryan Strome here in the article, talks about how he was a guy who, in the most recent season of New York Rangers play, put up 59 points in 70 games, 18 goals, 41 assists, a career high in assists by far. This guy had more assists in the most recent season than he has had points in almost every other season he's had in the NHL, except for his 2014-15 campaign with the Islanders, where he had 50 points. But he was a guy who was kind of on the downturn. From the Islanders to the Oilers over to the Rangers, he didn't really have that same kind of star power that he did in the most recent season of play, where he suited up with Artemi Panarin. He was having all the chemistry over there with Mr. Panera Bread himself, and he found himself centering that Panarin line pretty much the entire year. It's why he had such a bolsterous point total, and it's why he was in a position where, as a guy who needed a contract, there were a lot of question marks as to what exactly would be the future. Would the Rangers go along with this guy? Would the Rangers trade him away? Would they be in a position to just give up on him entirely and try to thrust Philip Cheadle into that second-line role? Well, they ended up doing a little bit of both pretty much, because they signed Ryan Strome to a 2-year contract at 4.5 AAV. It expires in 2022, and it's probably the most truest sense of a bridge deal that you can get. He'll be 29 years old. Actually, no, he'll be 28 when the contract ends, because the contract is going to end foreseeably before his birthday in 2022, and by that time, the Rangers will have a little bit more of a decision to make when it comes to their center core. But this article over here goes over what exactly Carpiniello says about Ryan Strome and his long-term future with the Rangers. Take a look at this. Ryan Strome, the number 2 center at the moment, and Panarin's most likely partner, just signed a 2-year deal. He is almost certain to be traded by the 2021-2022 trade deadline, though, because by then, the Rangers will either be sure he isn't a legit number 2 center going forward, or his Panarin-driven stats will be so good that they can't afford to re-sign him as a UFA. Essentially, what Carpiniello is saying is that Strome will either be too bad to give an extension to, or too good to be able to afford an extension. Huh. And is a pretty good way to go about it, because Ryan Strome is indeed a guy who actually got so much better this most previous year playing with Panarin. And it's not difficult to understand why. I mean, Panarin was a Hart candidate, a Lindsay candidate, one of the best players in the league. And if you thrust a declining center who is on his way out of the league sooner rather than later beside Panarin in an attempt to revitalize his career, he's probably going to try to play his best, and man, he played his best with Artemi Panarin. So, the bridge deal was a question mark because most people were saying, okay, how do we know that Strome getting himself a very good 59 points in 70 games played was just not entirely carried over there by Panarin? How do we know that he's actually legitimately trending upwards? Because still, even though he is getting points, even though he is actually meshing well with one of the Rangers' best forwards, he still is a guy who might not actually be worth it if you decided to go long-term with this guy. Is he still as valuable as he is at $4.5 million when he doesn't play with Panarin? Whether or not he is or isn't is going to change your approach, which is why the possibility that's being explored in this piece says that if Strome is out there and he actually just kind of tanks a little bit for the next 2 seasons after putting up 59 points in 70 games and he decreases his production long term, then it's easier for the Rangers to say goodbye and be like, okay, sorry bud, we're trading you. Philip Cheadle, it's 2022, you're probably good enough to be the second-line center now. Come in here, fill in that role. But if he is so good and he meshes incredibly well with Artemi Panarin, well, all of a sudden in 2022, the New York Rangers are going to have some problems on their hands when it comes to how exactly they're going to re-sign Strome, because he's going to need a contract extension then in 2022. By the time 2022 rolls around, the Rangers would have needed to give out contracts to Philip Cheadle, Ryan Lindgren, Pavel Buchnevich, and the big one over here, Igor Shesterkin. The next year, after when you need to re-sign that Ryan Strome, hey, you know who else has a contract that you're going to have to give money to? Yeah, Capo Caco. So there indeed is going to be quite the controversy when it comes to the decision-making part of the Rangers, especially by the time 2023, 2024 rolls around, because Lafreniere is going to need a contract as well after he signed his ELC earlier this offseason. That expires in 2023. So adding that onto the Ryan Stromes and the Mika Zibanejads of the team, who are also going to need contracts then too, it really gets messy really, really quickly. So that's why the prediction over here is that by the time 2022's offseason rolls around, Ryan Strome is no longer a Ranger. He would have been traded earlier, either because he's not good enough to stay around with the team, especially with the expectation put upon him in the most recent season going forward, or because he's too good that he's going to demand so much money that you're going to have some problems re-signing Zibanejad and Kako and all the other stuff as well in that time frame. And yeah, things get really messy. So that's kind of why I wanted to bring this up over here, because it is indeed an idea that doesn't really have any merit until 2022. This article over here on NHLTradeTalk.com goes over what exactly could happen if Strome has another big season too. Take a look at this over here. If Strome hits it out of the park in a 56-game 2020-2021 season, expect the trade chatter to really pick up. He'll be at his highest trade value around the league, and with so much uncertainty surrounding the cap, the expansion draft, and with teams wheeling and dealing in an attempt to free up money or work with Seattle to protect players of their choosing, Strome trade rumors will heat up. The article closes off by saying the best case scenario for the Rangers is that he does explode and he does play very well, because if he does, the Rangers will have options should they put themselves in a position to need to trade him. And honestly, it indeed is kind of frustrating taking a look at how exactly this could go, because with the Rangers' really good long-term projectability with these prospects, Lafreniere, Kako, Kravtsov, Buchnevich, you have some very good young names on this team. Plus the really good older guys too in Zibanejad and Panarin, it puts Strome in this weird boat where if he performs to the same standard he did last season, he may just work himself out of a job in New York, because the way this team is constructed today and how they're going to be constructed in the future might not have room for a guy like Ryan Strome, who is 27 years old, who is on that tail end of being good enough to be considered elite, and just on that tail end of being a one-hit wonder. So we'll really see within the next calendar year whether or not Ryan Strome is able to keep up what he did last season. If he continues to play well with Panarin, then that's going to be a good thing for the Rangers. But if he doesn't, we'll see his name on the trade block for other reasons, or we'll see him not suit up for the Rangers in a few years for other reasons potentially as well. So talk to me in the comments what you think about this idea. Is it inevitable that Ryan Strome's time in New York will expire by the time 2022's offseason hits? I want you to tell me in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. Trolls 99, and bye.